Yeah. Good evening. I'm happy to have you here tonight. Unfortunately, many people are late because we have traffic problems today. Today, we're going to speak about a very sensitive and hot topic, and that is climate change. There are so many theories about climate change, a lot of false ideas, a lot of politicizing about it. Not all of them are really scientific. So we need to have clarification, a clear view of climate change. And you all know Dr. Ahmed Sidqi from his previous lectures in Islamic architecture, in Islamic ornaments, jewelry, and artisanates. And we know how he tackles his subject in great depth and with a great scientific mind. So today, he is doing the same thing with climate change. He's going to take us into a really detailed scientific investigation of climate change. Thank you, Ahmed.
Thank you.
And
thank you, Professor.
Please.
Thank you. Yes. I would like to thank you all and thank the audience. I'm going to speak today about one aspect of the development projects right now. We know that is becoming trendy, which is in sustainable development. Climate change is a very pressing issue. It's on a political side that we know that COP27, COP28, and all of this, and the importance of such events, and showing the importance and how the governments, the international community is really interested in that. This is highly well appreciated. And only God knows what's going to happen with Trump is taking over. And also in the economic dimension, there is considerations of the the green economy, and the considerations of the green economy, because since the Earth Summit in 1992, it's becoming like we're all living in the same chamber, which is the globe. And definitely there are the mass production is coming from China, from the States. So we are paying the prices that we have never committed for whatever we never committed. It's committed by the States and by the Chinese and so that definitely they got to purchase, the first world countries or this kind of industrial countries, they are purchasing the rights or the rights for keep their production within our countries, or the third world countries or the less fortunate countries, and not really advanced in industry. They can claim back saying that, okay, you took your chances already and you are advanced, you are developed, but we are developing, so why you are depriving us? It's as if it is a kind of a conspiracy game or so. So there is so many concepts like business as usual. This is your production, and according to that, with this production, you're going to achieve much pollution with time. Tons of carbons that they are going to accumulate, and you're going to be responsible for that. What we are going to contribute to you is that it's a mandatory that we are deducting from our income at the first world some payments that you can help yourself by making it more environmental friendly, etc. So it's becoming an economy, it's becoming a portion, it's becoming a market, it's becoming that we purchase your green status, France, UK, and so they are not donating, but in fact they are paying their dues. So we have to understand this very well, but we have to know how to use that. Today, we are going to focus, because everybody is only focusing on the ecological aspects, etc. I'm going to focus on the human aspects and the local community side that is normally overlooked. From my background, as you know, that I'm very much into urban design, urban management, and of course heritage management. So what a guy coming from this background got to do with that. By all means, when we study and when we understood very well the Islamic architecture and the urbanism, we understood how far those people were really worked by respecting and understanding environment. And by the way, I'm against the term Islamic in Islamic architecture. It's a kind of the architecture that is contextual and that is synthesized in a certain community according to some set of mind and concepts and doctrine that is really influenced or articulated in the prototypes that we learned together. And we saw how those people were climately adopting with the arid zone nature of our region. And if they are in some other part of the world, then definitely the architecture that they are producing as the prototypes are changing with time. So they are changing according to the context, etc. So those people are really talented in this game. So they are more ecological than many architectures that we have today. Like, for example, if we look at traditional mansions in Cairo, many of these mansions, they would qualify as LEED buildings. So they would qualify easily as LEED, silver LEED, or granted a gold LEED, because of the carbon emissions, because of the recycling aspects that we can see in their architecture, etc. But I need to go, as everybody would go. I understood also that whatever building that you have, believe it or not, then when we work and understand the environment and ecological dimension of how we can manage a city, how we can manage urbanism, that's why we see many areas, they are regenerated, they are total buildings are refurbished, and we are pressing life into some neighborhoods. Maybe sometimes the social price is expensive, because I know that this would be called a gentrification or so. But at the end of the day, you know, if you have a standing building and you don't demolish it, and if you want to have a new one, if you keep the old one and make adaptive use for that, or refurbish it or rehash it and make it more appealing, then you are in fact cost-wise saving at least 30-35% of the cost of the project. And definitely the lifespan of the project. And the most important thing, the environmental price is hefty, because you minimize the use of extra cement, extra products that would definitely contribute to the pollution of the environment. And that's why when I call for the protection of heritage, etc., I am not really removed from the game, because I'm asking people to please respect the typologies that respected environment from the beginning, from its initiation. And that's why they were initiated to act like that, and also to maximize the lifespan of some values, of some venues that we are using and utilizing, and we should continue. So we are minimizing actually the demand for that, and the mass production and uncontrolled carbon emissions that might generate it according. But there is another dimension, because when people think about the carbon emissions, etc., then always we jump toward the ecological aspect. Climate change and mitigating or making adaptation, it's part from within the sustainable development dream. Sustainable development, sustainability in general, is about social, environmental, and economic. So economic aspects is definitely about the money and how you respect that, and according to the economic model that is dominating a certain context that we have to respect. And social is also administrative, which is the legislation and the legal systems that is controlling all of that, as well as the local communities and the demands of that community and the cultural considerations that we have to respect, etc. Environmental is definitely the ecological, but they are all together got to be respected. But unfortunately, that we focus mostly on the environmental aspect. How I get in touch with that? Heritage, that is my original background that I came from, and heritage management really necessitated, or we also suffer from climate change. Like, for example, the city of Panama, Panam in Bangladesh. They are always submerged by floods. And they are great architecture, Islamic architecture, made of Adabi architecture, which is bricks, big bricks, and they are fantastic typology. But unfortunately, they are submerged most of the time. They are subject, and you know that the water is really threatening this kind of heritage and architecture and urban heritage. So with some research, you don't have to just spend zillions amount of money, like you making dams in order to stop these floods. No, the answer was simple. Something to learn, that we learn how, by understanding ecological dimensions, not necessarily that we just have to spend lots of money by building ditches or something like that. You know what was the solution for something like this? Expand in growing bamboo. By growing bamboo, bamboo is very, very, very thirsty. They need water all the time. So by growing that bamboo, in fact, they survived. And it was a protection and make a kind of context that is complementing and merging this environmental aspects. So we learn from my background, where I come from, what does it mean to work as such, and to work in a way that would respect the ecological aspects, even in heritage. Let's go further and see more and get indulged more. The best community and the best example I can illustrate the respect of nature is definitely the Nubian architecture. And we know that Hassan Fathi, the renowned architect, is really inspired by the Nubian architecture, that their architecture and the mud architecture actually, and how they are working as a kind of, they provide the thermal isolation needed in such a south part, very hot in Egypt. And we can see also how colorful are the schemes there, and they are respecting their identity, and they're still protecting it until today. But unfortunately, civilization really got its own price. In fact, I don't call it civilization, but I call it the trends or trendifying lifestyle is really jeopardizing all of that. They are no more as anything but the tourist attraction rather than anything else. What you can see here is one of the models still surviving in the Wahat oasis in southern Egypt, in the western desert of Egypt. But unfortunately, most of the cities there in the Wahat, in the oasis, in the western desert, they are suffering because of the typology, the building typology, as you can see, which is a traditional one that necessitated certain lifestyles, that necessitated certain architectural typology and maintenance and how to look after them, etc., that they provided really great thermal comfortability for those who are living within. They are coming out of fashion, out of trend, thanks to the media, thanks to the media production and everything else, thanks to the lifestyle and the jobs and the functions of the people. They started to look down upon their own culture and how they developed. The community itself in its essence is really changing. That is something that we have to consider and to respect. So that's why, in fact, we're losing this for that, for the reinforced concrete. But believe it or not, when people are willing to go for such typology, and forget about that, this would minimize the need for the mechanical devices and the air conditioning systems for the whatever we can use in there. This kind of architecture can take the temperature up to 60 Celsius during the summertime. That is hell. But in fact, this would provide something like 12 Celsius less than the outside, or even more sometimes in the very hot season. Still, they are against that. By the way, in the development projects, don't come and say that I'm dictating the people, I'm telling them that this is for your benefit. You cannot do that. Don't ever commit this mistake. Don't challenge the culture of the people, even if it is a deviated culture. But you need to understand them, see their aspiration, and understand why they are against that. So, in fact, in such towns where we lost the typology, only this, which is like a governmental building, actually it's like a post office or so, that is surviving from the traditional architecture. Everything else really give room for this kind of, in fact, it's not giving a room. In fact, it's dominating the architecture there, which is completely unsustainable, which is completely unwise, which is completely getting the people in thermal ovens. So why they are doing that? They are doing that because they believe that they have a kind of social degradation. If I am still living in the mud architecture houses, then I am of a lower social strata. And you cannot really challenge this. And definitely, with the level of education that they started to get, the only connection that they have is with Asyut University. By the way, they are very advanced in the environmental studies, in the environmental design. and definitely they're becoming more and more and searching for jobs, etc. So they are linked with the Green Valley, which is of a different climatic conditions, and they are bringing back their lifestyle to their hometown, erasing the traditional architecture that was designed for centuries to respect the ecology and the environment, etc., with whatever you can see right now to resemble this that is existing in Delta, because of also the government overlooking what is happening and the uncontrolled urban development as it is happening there. So they are bringing the same disease, the same urban problem to their own oasis that might survive, that people might survive with that in Delta, but it's not, and it's never the case in Western Desert. Still, they are taking the burden of 60 Celsius during the summer by the treatment that they're going to do. One basic question, when you design, if the design is good, so don't tell me, it was a very decent instructor, he said, don't design something and say, but there is in my design a problem, so I'm going to solve it by adding. No, from the beginning, overcome the problem, design something efficient, and don't create the problem and then solve. So please, those people are doing that. Why? So I started to go with some analysis with them. Why you're not happy with your mud architecture house? You can see how dull it is. It's monocolor, it's dull. The finishing is not like the proper buildings that we might have with sharp, clean edges. The tiles, come on, the ground are from sand, and I don't have at least the terrazzo floor. I don't have anything like that, and as you can see, this kind of architecture is really lots of maintenance needed and all of the things. You might have a point, sir, but imagine that you might have outer skin out of ecological material. Would you mind, as long as it would give me some decent, neat thing? Some decent, neat look, something that is not with this kind of curvature that is happening by the mud application mixed with the calcium or with all of the lime and all of the things. The problem is, when we study the past, we need to understand that we need to fulfill the requirements and the aspiration of the local community, and to provide them with also something that we are not imposing lifestyle on them, but we have to understand and to make treatment. So all the materials, but with new technology. Now we have the advancement of the labs and we have the advancement of the technology. Why can't we apply something that is decent and would answer them back? That is the quality that we might be aspiring for. There is a professor called Muhammad Rafi, and he developed so many, he's been involved in lots of good research about the mud architecture and about how the bricks, mud architecture is far much better in thermal things than big bricks, because its capability of absorbing and making this kind of lag or difference in time between outside and inside is enormous. As compared, then the second quality would come for the big brick, and then the stones, and then the awful thermal cement-based structures. So the bricks that he produced with clean cut and with neat, with quality, with ability to resist for the shear pressure, and all of these forces that was essential to understand and to know. Also, who said that I have, if I'm using this unbaked bricks, but by using very wise technology, that I have to overlook the quality and the modern look? Actually, this typology for villas from, this is Nubian, by the way, and you can see the clean cut. It's like Sidi Bou Said, for example, architecture in Tunisia. Something very decent, something is applied with modern technology, but this one is designed in Bangladesh and India. They are fantastic in this kind of architecture. Many of these examples, they are baked bricks, actually, and they are applying this in quality bricks in a way that would provide me with the shape that I need. It reflects some quality architecture, still maintaining the envelope, which is the outer skin of the structure, that would definitely overcome this kind of problems that I might face with the living furnace that they have with 60 Celsius. Now, definitely, we can come over that here. There is also another researcher. She developed her PhD in Sweden, and she did something fantastic. She said that if I'm going to have the car chic, and this is the bricks from the Karshik, traditional in Siwa architecture, Siwi architecture, then what I need to do is I need right now to play with the components. I need to play with the sand and with the equations in order to test it and make lots of testing. And she understood that لازم تحط material محرشة, meaning that I need to just get this kind of sand, and I need to increase the quality and the behavior of the bricks and its collapse in the studied collapsing lab testing, in order to be able to provide a contemporary Karshik material, traditional material that would answer and bring me back to this kind of pseudo-modern buildings. So in fact, I'm giving you what you want without compromising the thermal quality, but simply by injecting science. How this is translated to carbon emissions? Simply. This way, I definitely would have better thermal behavior in the building. And definitely, I'm not using lots of electricity and lots of AC, etc., which is translated by them. Because we know that it's like transportation, number one, and number two is urban and lifestyle usage, meaning that the air conditions and all of the things is definitely contributing to with a maximum level of. First is agriculture, and the second is transportation, industry maybe come also with agriculture, and then urban things. But right now, I'm going to not speak about the architecture, sorry, this kind of architecture, but that was like an overture, something that I'm going to just speak about the subjects that I'm here for. But in fact, I'm speaking about some projects that I was responsible for representing it in Egypt, which was cleaner energy saving Mediterranean cities. That was the contribution of the European Union to the countries of Southern Mediterranean. So I was responsible or representing the project in Egypt, and we were in fact producing a strategy for each country. That was the case, called SECAP, which is Sustainable Clean Energy Saving Action Plan, and of course, considering or directing toward the climate change, because it is mostly focused on the carbon emissions. Everything was about the energy, and the game is how to produce a national strategy and to have many case studies. In fact, we had in Egypt 2 case studies, Hurghada and Luxor. But Luxor City, and we focused on certain parts. Why? Because you cannot go for everything. Of course, it's a national considerations is for the whole country. And in order to deal with such a thing, to produce a strategy, you need to address many dimensions at the same time, all in one go, like energy and electricity, the usage of the electricity, the renewable energy utilization and how the country is using it, legislation and how the legal system is really facilitating that. Of course, we don't in Egypt, unfortunately, easily. And tourism and heritage was one dimension also. And of course, urban development, agricultural development, all in one go, because we just cannot go and address that because everything is working together. It's one system, one matrix. Like I like always to address this kind of verse in the Bible, all things working all together for the goodness for those who love God. That verse I adore in the Bible, meaning that things are like matrix and they are working all together if we can understand them and we can get them all to work for the goodness, for the very good purpose. So why we focused on Luxor, we needed to go for some place which is a blue ocean, not a red ocean in business language, meaning that it's not like all the projects would go and would work well in Giza, in Cairo, in Alexandria. We wanted our project to just show up and to be obvious as a catalyst, as a good example, and symbolic at the end of the day, so it can be easily, when we apply for the donors and those who can bring some grants for some certain projects, can have this applied, and then accordingly the country would be able to, after we just make capacity building and we help those people who are in charge, like in the national organization of urban development and those responsible for the municipalities, etc., to be able to renew the case and making it somewhere else. So we took Luxor as a good example because it is also very well known and very well observed by the international community, because that is the prime heritage also hub and for tourism in general. So that was the table of contents, and in fact that part that I'm exhibiting right now is about Al-Qurna. So I'm speaking about, I was responsible, that is completely my work, assisted by architect Sarah Ali, and she is a very talented architect. I have to state, because of the copyright, that it is EU copyrighted materials and the CES-MED project materials, but I'm entitled to exhibit that as long as I am explaining and telling the work and the effort that we have. So we have Al-Qurna, and Al-Qurna is not just a spot like that here, because Al-Qurna is a big area, as we can see all of that area. If we are here in the city of Luxor, overlooking on the other side of the Nile, we'll see the mountains and a green belt. This green belt of agriculture, and that is the image since Agatha Christie time and the Thomas Cook traditional turn of the 20th century's aspiration of murder of the Nile or so. So that is in the romantic thinking, is a river, a mountain, greens, and within the archaeological sites. That was the image, and that is the purity of the game and how we can do it. Definitely there is a bridge that happened here, and unfortunately the bridge that happened here, it was applied without environmental impact assessment. That is very dangerous, and I'm going to tell why. So as we can see, here is a vegetation, and this part of the city that is Al-Qurna, which is where the famous Al-Qurna village built by Hassan Fathi, and where they were living on the mountains. And the mountain is a geographical boundary. So that geographical boundary, yep, because of the outer sounds. I'm sorry for that. So the mountain itself is a barrier, and the River Nile is another barrier. 30% of the economy here is for the agriculture. So agriculture is a very prominent mean of economy for the local community, and 70% is for the tourism. So the problem is that we have also people living within Al-Qurna, and we have people living from in Al-Qurna, Habu and Basil. Habu after the name of the temple Habu, and we have the whole area is punctuated by this fantastic ancient Egyptian from the New Kingdom architecture and archaeological sites, as we can see, agricultural area as we can see here, and the River Nile. Still we are protecting the identity of the boats and the River Nile, so the sails are always wide. There is no advertisement on that. Why I'm saying this? Because that is a bit violated in a sense. Let me focus on the problems. When you had this bridge introduced without environmental impact assessment, you didn't put the scenario of what's going to happen after the bridge. So what happened is the expensive mansions here got the people to expand the influx in order for the uncontrolled urban development. So exactly what is happening in the delta happened here in the very narrow stripe of this green agriculture. So we started to see many areas, they are turned into agricultural, from agricultural usage into a built area, especially the need for boutique hotel and the development for people who are from these villages in order to just get their sons and daughters to have their own new families, etc. Everything is uncontrolled. When I asked the Department of Environment in the municipality, and I said the localities they call it, what do you do? I said, I'll just write consent or not a consent. He's not consenting, but in fact I'm billing them, but I know that there is nothing we can do. So at the end of the day, the situation would remain as it is, and they continue the development. So what is happening really for the agricultural land? And those people of high power, they started to have their own villas in here, like if you are a man of high rank or whatever, so definitely you would love to have your own villa with a private garden. So this waterfront, instead of being agricultural land, started to be a more like, or taking another format that should, and from the beginning it was contradicting with this originally a village, but it's becoming a town and then a city, that this in itself is becoming for the prestigious people, VIPs, istiraha, or second residence, or even first residence for those people of high ranking living in there. So what would happen then to the agricultural development? Unfortunately, agricultural development started to influx in different parts and is becoming very high threat for the archaeological sites. So they started to just be closer, getting more and more closer to the archaeological sites, Habu Temple, etc. So the irrigation water and whatever from the sewage of or system from the urban development, or whatever residues of the water that is from the agricultural activities, etc., they are becoming more and more a threat for the archaeological sites as well. So what we have here in this diagram is that I am trying to show that the urban and agricultural zone pressure, they started to just cast their own pressure on the heritage site, and the heritage site itself is becoming like something that is really halting me from expanding. So I hate it because I'm within this neighborhood, but I cannot perform my rights, my lifestyle in a way. So everything is like under horrible conflict. In fact, that is the situation in the Western Bank. And I couldn't really understand how awful it is when I just get more and more to study in depth this. And when I get closer and closer, I started even to learn something even worse. As we can see, that is a bridge, and as you can see, that the urban development uncontrolled is attacking and then grasping or taking or capturing this land that normally before was bordering the archaeological sites, is becoming more and more agricultural, and this would cause its own hazards on the archaeological sites. Things are really not getting good. It's a threat, and everybody's not happy. So this is an urban situation. This is a phenomenon that we have to deal with. It's a rural-urban phenomenon that is totally imbalanced, as we can see. Still, we would like to go there as the EU in order to just try to introduce some interventions that would get the carbon emissions, to lessen the carbon emissions. Oh my God. You need to control and to manage and to regularize before you think about carbon emissions. Needless to say, do you remember this situation that I told you about those people who prefer in such hot seasons, in such hot climate, to build with a more prestigious, community-regarded type of architecture? So they overlooked this kind of mud architecture, and some of those people who were building mud architecture for the foreigners as second residences, that they have it close to Habu or Basil village or so, from those who are British retirees living in there. When they built for their son getting married, so they built in reinforced concrete. I asked him, how come that you built for your son what you built for others? He said that because this is my lifestyle, this is my first residence, not my second residence. So it's something that got to be very practical. Okay, I got it. So what we need to do? We need to apply the SECAP. We need to have urban and rural development analysis. We need to have the heritage site management in order to reach to that which is a more balanced situation. Right now, I'm not speaking really about minimizing carbon emissions. I'm speaking about a situation that is hectic for everybody, and by itself, in each and every dimension that I mentioned, it contains the extra problems. Can I tell you how? It's simply like that. For example, agriculture, I said, it's really bringing lots of awful carbon emissions if it is uncontrolled. Let me show you one good example. They always say that the cattle and the uncontrolled agricultural things is that they are producing because of this kind of, experiments and this kind of breeding it would cause this kind of methane and green gas effects, etc. Another awful thing that is tons of biomass, agricultural waste. And the agricultural waste is a disaster in there because they are growing to harvest that they are burning. For example, the sugarcane and banana. I adore them. However, it costs them for individual hands to go and harvest and to get rid of that and collect the biomass of such harvest during the seasons of collecting that or harvesting that, to burn that, and they are burning it for the banana 2 times a year and for the sugarcane 1 time a year. This would create a kind of like a big burning lung disease, horrible black smoke in the city of all Luxor. It contributes badly to the image of the city because the city has been long known as an environmental paradise, heaven for those who are really seeking the quality of air, part of the environmental quality. And remember, cultural tourism is not everything. Right now, ecological tourism, ecotourism is number 1. If I don't have, like for example, one of the best and most ancient, most important wonder of the world is the pyramids. But Cairo is cursed by being one of the most polluted, so that's why many avoid Cairo. Can you believe it? And it's the same that might be happening in here, and people started to prefer the Egyptian Riviera on the Red Sea and just making snapshots to visit Luxor, while Luxor itself was a beauty like Aswan, and because of this uncontrolled management of our agricultural development. Needless to say, this kind of totally alienated style that is totally out of any style or respecting the cultural value of the Habu temple. As we can see, there is no control, there is no municipal regulations that is really necessitating respecting the typology, etc. is also another thing that is not contributing to the overall image of the areas that of open spaces and public spaces, not contributing to the main economic dimension, which is a tourism in that spot. So all of them and each one of them is really contributing a lot to lots of their problems. Needless to speak about is the architecture itself, as I explained. So this kind of traditional architecture, this kind of passion about that is a very prominent practice by those who are performing Hajj, pilgrimage. So when they are receiving them back, they have paintings. Some of the paintings were really depicting some images inspired from the pharaonic ancient drawings, and they are applying it. They are very proud of the traditions and they are applying it to the houses. The houses as such are disappearing because what I mentioned, because nobody is helping them to fulfill their sense of self-regarding that you can contribute by new technology, by old materials, but new technology that would help you to overcome what you suffer from. As we can see, that is the village of Hassan Fathi, which was very ecological, as we can understand, of course, because of the mud architecture, but they are unfortunately in a collapsing situation. They are protecting it right now, not to be a good example to repeat, because it's becoming out of fashion. It's not really preferred by the people, but because in itself is becoming heritage. But again, I care about heritage, but my background, my original background is an architect. So I'd like to cite the term, I take the past on board as long as it serves today's needs. I understood and I studied heritage because I wanted to get an extra catalog for my lifestyle, to contribute, to learn from this open repertoire of production in order to bring the technologies and the knowledge to my today's needs and demands. And I can learn a lot from those people, as I previously explained. We're losing all of that. And the people, nobody is really managing things together. Needless to say, the archaeological sites are really paying the price for that. If the archaeological sites are endangered, then the goose laying the golden egg is gone. So, unclear regulations, illegal construction, lack of enforcement, gradual degradation, destruction of monuments, hazard and the risk and hazards analysis are providing us more with everything like that. I developed also chain of problems because I just had to trace, okay, like, you know, when you're laddering up, laddering down, what, why, and I started to understand and collect the tracing the chain of problems like uncontrolled urban expansion, erosion of the agricultural built areas, so intensification of the built up area, increase of emissions, degradation of the environmental quality, and then definitely this is one chain, another. We need to reach out to something that for this scattered model, we wanted to have it in a more balanced way in order to reach to an environment that is a bit in harmony, in order to see that there is a controllable urban development and in harmony with the agricultural area, and that respecting the demands and the need and the well-being of the heritage site that is in itself representing the core of the 70% of the economy of the whole region, because people living in Habo and Basil villages, they are need for that. Many of them, they are working as restorers. Many of them are working and selling some stuff. They are producing, they are indulged in the business in such a way. That meant we needed to have some kind of intervention that would help with all of that. And meanwhile, when we introduce that, we need to add all of that in a way that when we add it, it would minimize the carbon price or the carbon emissions that is happening while everything is happening like that. There is a term called business as usual. What is the business as usual? Well, if the EU, which is the winged one, and I'm the angel of the EU, and I am intervening in your life, the business as usual is the situation that you damn yourself being in that. If I left you like that, then in 10 years, I see with the graduation of the increased number of the inhabitants and the pressure. So if the pressure right now is 5 or 10, then it's gonna be like 120 in exponential equations. So understand that you will be in a drastic situation, and definitely only God knows that whatever environment that you have, that would be in a very degraded quality. And I understand that nobody would be visiting inevitably your temples or anything. So an inevitable intervention is needed, and not one intervention, in different dimensions. Let me tell you how. And people would normally say, well, that is the set of mind of the people in charge, in the municipality, in the governorate, saying, okay, we need to minimize the carbon emissions, so at least I need an electric train. Excuse me? Electric train, because this would minimize the carbon emissions, and you're gonna spend $2 billion or euros in order to just get you this infrastructure for a number of inhabitants that is not going to be. What kind of thinking is that? And well, your investment in that is not going to be efficient. As I said about efficiency, do you remember the model of the bamboo and expanding in the bamboo in order to get the traditional or the historical buildings in Panam to survive? Meaning that I need to get the minimum amount of money to be invested in environmental friendly projects that would help and intervene and to be therapeutical answer for that. Take an example, and it's within the heritage site management. In front of the Memnon Castle, the big statue where they are punched in a way, pushed in a way that wind, when they are penetrating them, they are making fancy sounds, etc. There is a building there in order for the German excavations and archaeologists, and they are working there doing a great job. There is a space for the tourist buses going there, and they never turn off their air condition. So these big buses, they are with engines turned on with air conditions, because some people, they are elderly enough in order, many, and we are receiving many, according to the age range studies, we are receiving many of them. So some of them won't go with the batch, with the group of the tourists in order to get inside the site, but they would remain and enjoy the air-conditioned part of the trip, remaining in there. The drivers, etc. Because you cannot ask the driver to be in a living sauna, which is the bus itself, because the tourism for that spot, that is the most important necropolis in the whole world. So you never stop tourism for that spot, summer and winter. So in fact, we have lots of vibrations because of the engines, and burning lots of gas, and carbon emissions are enormous. So we have to have some interventions for that part itself. And now I'm explaining that. We call this a project fish. What is the project fish? The project fish is when you design the strategy, you need to have everything is like a feasibility study. So you cannot go for any donor and saying that, give me some money to minimize the carbon emissions and help me by doing this kind of electric train or something. He would send you away. They demand you to just give me something very efficient and to give me not only a budget, financial budget, but I need a carbon budget. What is that? Meaning that if you get me two projects, one of them is really fantastic and great and would be contributing to the infrastructure, but I'm investing like 1 million euros in order to minimize 1 ton of carbon emissions. But I can get you another one that would give you the same carbon tons, but for 100,000 euros. I would go for the cheaper, definitely. So that's why we had the project fish. And it is designed in a way that most of the donors would be accepting according to the EBRD, which is a European bank, and the World Bank, and so they are all consulted in a format that is designed in order to say that what is the problem, tell me summary about it, and what is your action accordingly. For this very case, so we said that there must be something that is complementing to the site in a way that respecting the overall design, and that is designed also playing as a symbolic project by its architecture in a way that would inspire the people when they build their own houses within the nearby villages of Habo and Basil. So that would be a tourist information center, ticketing spot, and a rest place for the drivers, and another istiraha or resting place or a cafeteria, etc., for those who are not going to continue the trip on getting inside the archaeological site or getting some refreshments, etc. And it would be definitely equipped with all the PVC panels and all whatever is needed. The thermal comfortability is granted by the architecture and the type of architecture, so that's why it's a symbolic in these terms, but also it's minimizing carbon tons are calculated in here, and the cost by the building cost itself is like 4,900, which is almost 5,000 euros by the count of that time, which is nothing. But when we do something like this, when we do the cost like that, then you calculate the carbon tons accordingly, the cost per unit, and the number of, we calculate everything like the building blocks, the construction, the training of the staff and the team that is needed for that. And all of that would be counted in order to just tell that, okay, when we spend this amount of money, then we know that we have the carbon tons that are expected. And for example, in order to say it, then we take the business as usual, which is the datum, and we put it in years, and you put it like in a budget of 20 years, if the business as usual, meaning that your situation is left like it is. And in 20 years' time, then the coaster, when it is standing and turning, because of the regular visits and the expected movement, etc., then I know that you would make emissions that would be up to these tons. But I am minimizing all of that, which is my calculations, according to the lifespan of that building. And it's not only going to last for 20 years because I'm going to maintain it, because I'm going to protect it, because of the lifespan of that is really far much. But we take a certain period of time in order to calculate that. And that's how I give the feasibility, not only financial feasibility, but also a carbon emissions and carbon ton feasibility. That was great, because you cannot imagine how far is that. But tell you the truth, how I learned to do something like that. Am I talking to the municipality, the localities? No. I talked to the local people, the local community, to learn from them the problems in order to understand what is really the problem that we have. And because of those people in the Department of Environment, they are getting indulged. So they are fine, the people there, but they understand that we find them, but we cannot do nothing to them because we understand that they had to go for whatever violations that they are making. It's not really, but that they are really criminals by committing these environmental problems. So I learned that clearly. So I wanted to go further and understand this from the drivers that I interviewed. I learned from the people a lot. And let me take you back to another case, that how we managed to just get the, oh no, I'm not thanking you yet, you are staying. To just be with me and see with me another situation that I would like to attract your attention to, which is in here, the transportation. Please remember, the bridge is there. The bridge is very far from the main settlement that is here, which is Habo village and Basil village. The only link is Maadi, which is a ferry boat that's taking the people here, and some of them really carrying some microbuses, the inhabitants to that spot. And the problem is that those people from the Basil village and the Habo village, they are not really nourished, or they are not linked with any form of public transportation. Why? Because they're immediately after the embarkment of the ferry boat, then the passengers there, when they descend from the ferry boat, they find the microbus waiting for them, taking them only to the archaeological site, which is the Memnon Colossal, maybe to Habo temple, but nothing more. What about the village? Nothing. They are not really connected. They are not linked to the outer world. That is unfair. So, okay, guys, you can do something decent. We can say that you can get a public bus line that is connecting you. No, sir, we are not accepting that. Why? Because of Adil Imam. He's a famous Egyptian comedian and the like, meaning that the Egyptian drama made or casted a very dull image for the public transportation, especially the buses, meaning that molestation and and all of these things might be committed within as I told you, in development, don't ever overlook the cultural filters, the cultural dimension. Respect it and try to handle it and deal with that. So what would you do? The microbuses are not reaching us. So we have to use the worst and most dreadful things. The motorcycles and the tricycles. The tricycles are representing the local means of their own public transportation. You can imagine the amount of the gas emissions and the gas burnt and the carbon emissions accordingly, and the quality of air that is definitely in a very dreadful situation. And if you have a sister, then definitely you're not a man if you're not giving your sister or mother a ride. Otherwise, she will be subjected to molestation or all of these things. They are Upper Egyptians, after all. You know what is the Upper Egyptian means. They are like the Irish for the British or something like that. So you have to respect that. At the end of the day, why those microbus people never come and serve you? They are not getting what they want, because at the end of the day, this is the... Well, the game is like that. What can we do? That is another thing. So here is another problem that we had to confront. So we had to go with the transportation on the West Bank, and the problem is always like that. There is no microbuses that can help you, taking you from the ferry boat. So we had to calculate things in a way that would help those people. we didn't go and try to convince the people, try to be more flexible, and why don't you just go? No. But we decided the following. If you are a microbus, we will take two. There's also always one going and another coming, and they are moving in a line that would be helping those people because they are connecting from the point of receiving the ferry boat and to reach to Habu and Basil villages, and the one is going, one is coming, and they are supplied by natural gas that cost by that time 12,000 Egyptian pounds only per each microbus. And that was a very good investment because by that time it was something like, I cannot tell exactly how much it was according to the exchange rate during the time, but it was nothing. And when we're doing that, that's an incentive for those people because it meant that their expenses are 20% less than their colleagues who are using the natural oil. And they will be doing that by nurturing themselves by getting from the natural gas station on the other side, but coming and be working along the day to help those people from these two villages and be happy with that. So the investment or the investment for the amount of carbon emissions that we minimize, because when we just calculate the number of the motorcycles that would be saved because of that, it's enormous, and each one would be costing, or which would be responsible for making lots of emissions, are spared. Can you imagine that? So just like when I told you that the answer can be something simple if you go in depth by understanding the culture of the people and reflected on your answers, on your interventions and solutions. It's like, for example, you don't have to go for the very expensive things, etc. No. For the heritage sites, I wonder why they do not have the PV solar panels for the illuminations, because in the evening there is no engineered lighting system on the mountain. You see the mountains as if it is like a popular wedding party. And it's not really controlled, it's not really reflecting much, and you can't see that there is no taste in that. For God's sake, there is masters in illumination, only how to let the city, how to cast your lovely lighting on the archaeological sites and the mountains in order to contribute to the overall psychological impact of such a beauty on the south side of the River Nile, while you are looking at that from your hotel on the waterfront of Luxor City. We needed to have this, so part of the project is still like that. The management of the agricultural waste was another thing, because they are burning this, and they will continue burning it. And believe it or not, they are killing the tourism golden goose that is laying the golden egg. So how come that you would answer this? Simply by making the waste itself worth money. In order to do that, you need to get a shredder that is cutting the straw and making it animal fodder. And the one unit would cost about 7,000 euro. If I go further to Romania, etc., I can get it for less. I can procure. I can do that. But again, if you do that, I know that there will be some business in the game, so definitely it should be entrusted to the large investor of the local community, like a community leader. He got the vast land, and he's not only doing it for himself, but he is lending it by leasing it, renting it for the other smaller agricultural investors or farmers, and they are doing that and they are having it. At least it's overcoming by such an investment. You can have, according to our counting, that you definitely would have like 2 at least units or 3, and out of the revenues that would happen from producing the fooders and minimizing the needs for purchasing what they need to feed their cattle from, they will be purchasing themselves the 3rd and the 4th unit, etc. It's going to be profitable for them. And they are going to do that. And the price is enormous. Simply, it's enough that we won't see this kind of horrible smog that is burning lungs for tourists and for the inhabitants, not only for the West Bank, but definitely it's wind, etc. So it will take it to the heart of the Luxor and Karnak temples. They could do that. And the answer is simple. And with the same thing, then we can just give capacity building, and so many people, many youths are active enough from the same community, and they do the methane oven, that they take the excrements of the animals and they take in such waste and pressure and make this kind of gas or animal gas, and that would contribute. So at least there is some carbon emissions, but it is controlled, and in return we bring energy that would minimize the utilization of burned energy, burning gas or burning electricity that is from oil or whatever somewhere else. So we can see that the answer is simple, and the public awareness unit is normally like that. You need also people to learn and to understand. Normally, when you go for projects like this, when you need people to expand in utilizing PV panels, etc., there got to be some kind of orientation. In fact, when you just introduce some kind of a new brand for mobile, this is marketing. But if the community is not really aware of the mobile phones, then that is PR. That is a public campaign. That is a public awareness campaign. And we are not speaking about this kind of, they are upper Egyptians, that they have their own set of mind, that we are not going to make a carnival or something. No, we need to get something that we call it symbolic projects in order to just do something very practical, meaning that seeing is believing. What is like, for example, the street lights. The street lights in itself, if the lamps on streets, it doesn't really bring lots of emissions, even if they are from halogen. But when I see how they are lit and how they, can you imagine that this lamp there, they are turning, it's automatically turned on, turned off because of the sun and because of the, it is pre-programmed, and it costs nothing. There is no consumption from the electricity bill. And then I would be glad if I invest in the PV panels. That we call it symbolic project. In order to be able to have those people who are facilitating this and to make the arrangements needed with the Souq al-Kahraba, which electricity souq, or the market where the electricity fixations and cables, etc., on the other side of the city, that would be subsidized by facilitating lots of components of the inverters on the PV panels, and believe it or not, to produce such panels, that they are not expensive. Because, for example, the governorate of Hurghada, they had one of the polytechnic schools, high school, which is a level of the secondary school, or they got the students to produce panels and lamps, which is the saving lamps by LED. Not by LED. So you can imagine what is going on. For the waterfront statics, then definitely you just had to respect that and cast some kind of law enforcement and resist this kind of corruption in the consenting license of development. Development consents got to be controlled. Otherwise, if you are well off, then you can definitely build skyscrapers in what you cannot do, because the uncontrolled land use got to be well managed. Integrated master plan are just essential for that spot. And if it is done, it's not something like we are planning, you're producing paper, but this kind of planning would harmonize the situation. You can imagine that how many interventions we were able to get by just simply adding this to the area. By introducing all of these interventions, you can imagine how many carbon tons we can save. That is great, and you can see that that is out of this kind of analysis, that is the hazards and risk analysis, and by controlling and minimizing from each sector, then we definitely would understand how this will, the well-being of each and every sector, agriculture, urban, housing, and the domestic activities, and the tourism, and the visited places and the archaeological sites, transportation, by understanding and going into in-depth interviews with the people, with the local inhabitants, and by listening to them. Lesson learned is simply like that. As I said, I'm going to recall it once again. Sustainability that we are all after, and part of it is to just mitigate and to just make some adaptation with this kind of climate change, but to try to mitigate from the beginning and in your designs, etc. But it's about the social and cultural legislation administration and socio-cultural aspects. The ecological is all what we focus on, but we overlook this. When we understand, we would learn a lot from those who are living in there. We learn a lot from the human dimension that is the local community. They will teach us how we overcome the problems, because the in-depth solutions and the intervention, they will never be able to generate them unless we apply this analysis. And the economic aspects, it definitely, you don't have to go expansive in order to help. I lost my post in the EU simply because I've been advised, no, they like hefty numbers. Give them try to suggest some kind of interventions with like at least 200,000 euros. You know, excuse me, when you go to a governor, he would tell you that, okay, give me the money and I have already my agenda. Excuse me, but with your agenda, the business as usual analysis that you have would get you in a situation that would take you to the dreadful situation. You're not helping yourself, and you are blindly overlooking all the considerations, the ecological considerations, etc. You need to just reconsider that. Like, for example, not all the solutions that you suggest, as I said, got to be expensive. I need some kind of mass transportation. I need this kind of electric train. Excuse me, sir, haven't you heard about the rapid mass transit, which is rapid bus transit, meaning that instead of just investing in lots of infrastructure and having this kind of bullet train on the, no. Invest, like, for example, Amman and Jordan, they have a certain lane dedicated and with good planning, and the land is already, asphalt is in there, the street is already paved, and you can have sidewalks, and each now and then we know that we have the stops in according to them different districts, and there will be some kind of good planning and pumps and the controlled areas in order for the pedestrian when they reach to their metro, sorry, with their station, and there is a lane that is already dedicated to that speed bus. It's the same value, the same efficiency, and it can be run by natural gas or even by electricity, by fully electric cars. And it would give you the same thing, and you don't have to spend all of that. It's like, for example, when my daughter would come to me, I saw this Gucci one. Baby, you go to your prime, but you don't have to get that Gucci things from inside. You're beautiful. If you get this dress, it would give you the same fashion, but we are branded. We need this brand, or we need this enormous amount of money. That is something wrong. So my last word is going not to anybody but the EU and the donors. Please, please, please try to understand that the good solutions would come from understanding, the profound understanding from the people themselves, from those who are living the situation, from those who are creating the phenomena. And by understanding them, you'll be able to produce something that is really reflecting that. The solutions are not only ecological, and then you translate it with money. With this amount of money, you can guarantee the efficiency of any intervention that you can suggest, with lots of carbon emissions less, but with minimum amount of money for the common projects. And please, please, please try to be or set a model for transparency in the expenditures, transparency on your system and your online materials. I know that you do that, but you just have to set a model for the countries in the third world, so you can be the example for the municipal system. You can impose that because you're giving the donation for that. And also the last thing, that according to my experience, I saw that the lifespan or that concern any officials in our countries, that is the 20 minutes of the inauguration ceremonies of the project. How far is my shoulder to the first lady or to the prime official when they are inaugurating a certain project? That is bad. And it's the same thing that is happening here. What I've been told, that the EU is really concerned about documents. So give us the documents for the project. It means is that because the projects are made by contractors. The contractors, they can be French, they can be whatever, and they are doing it for Bangladesh or they're doing it for Egypt or Mali or only God knows where. So they care about the product because it's a kind of submittal, but it's not from within. It's not really by heart. So at least you need EU and donors to get this with at least one symbolic project, because seeing is believing. Everything is papers is not enough. Thank you. And if there are any question, I'm here for that. Yeah.
I'll make a few comments.
Yes, please.
I'll give you about my experience in
Here, because of the sound.
of the sound I have
Yeah.
to be with.
Yeah.
Okay. We looked at the problems from a certain point of view here.
Exactly.
But taking the example of El Gorna, ecological problems start at the macro level. They start with the choice of the place and the interaction with the environment. And if you do that wrong from the beginning, it will be wrong at the end. So we look at Gorna from the pure architectural point of view, and that, I think, Ahmed did a very good job showing us the architectural point of view. I might have a few words to say here. I went once to Gorna, and the driver was explaining to me some things that were to them very obvious, but to us were not obvious. He said he respects the way Hassan Fathi built the buildings, but he sees a problem there. He sees you come and build buildings for us, you build them with mud bricks, you put domes, put things like that.
Statically appealing.
But you don't ask us about our opinion. First of all, we don't sleep under a dome
No.
to begin with.
Yep.
Here in Egypt, we say always a dome is for the dead.
Yeah.
تحت القبة شيخ.
Shrine. It's a shrine, like it says.
The dome is for the circulation areas. In Islamic architecture, you had the dome over circulation areas.
Or
But you-
commemorating a shrine.
or
Which
a
is,
shrine.
yeah, a holy place.
They said we sleep under a vault, but they said you have to have the vault facing north-south, so that first of all you have the wind, the north wind coming through it. Second of all, they have holes on the side, and the holes are adjusted to the movement of the sun and the stars.
Yep.
So in the morning, in the first hole when the sun shines, this is where they put the bed, so that they have to wake up before the sun shines, so that the sun cleanses the
Yep.
bed.
Yep.
And so all the activities in the house are actually linked to the outside. There's a whole culture about the link to the moon, the stars, and all that. So that was from the point of view of the driver telling me we have a tradition and we have a very deep relationship with nature and with cosmology, and nobody ever asked us
No.
anything about that. Okay, so I understood that, but then as he told me things that I knew as a planner. He told me, for example, that usually they say that we didn't want to live in Gorna,
No. No.
because Gorna, they built it and everything, but they say that we drowned it with the water,
Yep.
so we cracked it and all that, and they blame us for saying that we want to live in the mountain to steal the graves and things
Yeah,
like
it's a
that.
tradition always to live on mountains because you are avoiding the floods, and
Yes.
it was a long history of
But
Egypt with floods.
He
Yes.
told me, do you think...
Before the high dam.
Yeah, he said, do you think if we were up there to steal the ancient Egyptian graves or tombs, do you think to steal a tomb, I'd have to build my house on it?
Yeah.
And then the next tomb, I'd move my house on each tomb. I can be anywhere and go and steal the tomb. So that's, all this is nonsense. He told me, look, when we live on the plateau, we are living in a dry climate.
Yeah, exactly.
And the dry climate is very healthy. When we move down,
Yeah.
it is very humid.
Humid.
and we cannot live in this humid climate. Now, when, first of all, the first mistake that was done is on a planning level by the government. Since ancient history, they always had the place for work and the place to live. The plateau was to live, and down, you went down, the green area was the work. Now, in the flood, it covered the green area, but you lived up there.
Yep.
So
You're protected.
you're always in the dry.
Yep.
Now they come, and I've seen that many times. It's a green area, and it's prohibited. I mean, people should not build in the green area, prohibited by the government.
Yep.
But then somebody comes, and they come and say, I'm giving 1 hectare as a present to the government so that they can come and build a project there.
So they are breaking the model.
So
Very cunning.
No, because they are not allowed to build in the green.
Yeah, but
the government is allowed. They have to get building license. The government doesn't have to. So they go down there, and I had this experience. I was consulting with the Ministry of Health, and they came and told us, here we give you a present, a plot to put a health
hospital
unit down there, a clinic, a health clinic.
Yeah, polyclinic.
So I told them, why should I go and put a polyclinic right on the Nile? This is agricultural land.
Yeah.
So they told me, we already, Gorna broke the rules already, and they built it there. So, and of course, when you build something, that means you get infrastructure.
Exactly.
And once they put infrastructure in the green land, it finished.
You cannot deceive the community.
Yes.
You need to listen
So
to them and to
they built
understand
it.
their demands. Yep.
Now, since ancient times, since the pharaohs, they always built in a certain way.
Yep.
Planning, green area, living on the dry area. When they built Maadi,
Yeah.
Maadi here was one of the best ecological projects that was ever built, because they respected the old ways. They had the old road, not the Corniche, the old Maadi road.
Helwan Road, I think.
The Helwan road, and you had on one side, all the way down to the Nile, was the green area.
Green area and
And
agricultural
on
land,
the,
yeah.
on the other side, you had the sand area.
No, because it's closer to the mountain, Muqattam, it's a bit, so it's a dry already, so you are
have a
investing
dry
in building
area.
in the dry area.
And so what they did, they built Maadi just after the road on the side with no agriculture, on the sand side.
Yep.
So we didn't
Now-
have the Corniche at that time at all?
No,
right?
and
No.
even if you build the Corniche on the Nile, that doesn't mean you have to build in the green area.
Yes.
But what happened is, Maadi was built, and what they did, they took canals from the Nile,
Yeah.
and the canals went to all the villas in Maadi. They had canals in Maadi, and you had Nile water, and then the community, every house in Maadi had this little stream coming in front of the garden, and you would come and close it. Each one had a day. On my day, I'd close it and let it come into my garden. Then the next day, I open it, and my neighbor closes. And so we had what we call water from the Nile that was rich water for agriculture. Of course, later on, they decided, no, oh, this is an old
After
system.
1952,
Why-
I guess.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's an old system. Forget it. We are modernizing Maadi. We will give you.
Which is
tap water.
intensifying development and making
Yes.
use of that rather
Now
than
you're
the
getting-
environmental quality, on the
Yes.
expense of the environmental quality.
Okay, so they just canceled all the canals in Maadi, and then they brought tap water. Now we're in country, we're in need of water. So why use all the tap water that we're purifying for agriculture.
Exactly.
Now we're using chlorine for agriculture.
Exactly. So we are harming it.
So we had the first solar station
That
in
is
the
true.
world.
1905
In the world, 1905 or 1904
1905.
in Maadi.
in Maadi.
So
That's
it was,
true.
the whole planning was ecology. The country could have learned from it and repeated it. What they did was cancel it. So, but there is, when we go back now, let's go back and see how a village should be planned. My father, Dr. Said Karim, he is the pioneer of modern architecture in the Middle East. He was in the first group that promoted modern architecture in Europe when they came out in the time of Corbusier and Van der Rohe and all those people. In the beginning, they were all in Europe together.
Yep.
And then just before the war, each one left to his country, started the modern movement. People thought that modern architecture is the way buildings look. Modern architecture has nothing to do with looks. And to show that when people think of Dr. Said Karim, they think of this villa, for example.
Yeah. Bauhaus, ultra
Yes,
modern, something like
but what
that.
they don't know is modern architecture is a philosophy. It's a planning, ecological philosophy. So the first thing he did when he came here in 1939, he wrote a book and in his magazine, and he said, the planning of the Egyptian village.
Yep.
The planning of the Egyptian village, he actually went and did that in Komombo for the factory, for the sugar factory. So when he went to Komombo, the first thing he said, let's do a proper planning before architecture, we do planning. The problem is, at the time of Hassan Fathi, because Hassan Fathi was after the revolution that he became known in the 60s and all that. But my father, although they're the same age, but he worked many years earlier. So in the 30s, he came and said, we have to build the old ways. On the plateau, I build the village. And on the green area, then this is where I do my farming, animals and all that. And then he designed the houses with two facades. One he called the working facade, so you had the roads coming with the animals and all that coming from one side to the house. And then you had the clean facade where people then went out to the mosque. They went out to
Respecting the very core cultural identity and set of mind of the Egyptian farmers, unlike the situation in Gorna, where he wanted to go for another model.
He respected the age-old, the 5,000 or 10,000-year-old way of planning according to the Nile. And that's why those villages, they're still there today, those two villages. But people, only two villages were built that way. People forgot it because everybody comes, he gives you a piece of land near the Nile. You're very happy. He gives you a piece of land, you build there, and all of a sudden, 80% of our green area is gone.
It's gone.
So a large part of the ecological adaptation of architecture starts from the macro level, from how you see your environment from the beginning. But if you make the mistake up there, you end up with, we're thinking the ecology of Gorna and other places, to begin with, it's in the wrong place. When it's in the wrong place, okay, you can solve all the other problems.
Please use the biogeometry language, meaning that you're bringing the life force into the... So you are respecting the life force and you bring in the life force to the urban phenomena that you are creating. In fact, you are not creating nothing, but you get really indulged in the overall existing matrix.
Yes, so ecological thinking is not just about pollution, is not about just carbon footprints, or it's not about using this or using that. Ecological thinking means wisdom the wisdom of understanding the earth, the climate, the beliefs of the people, and then building according to the climate.
Exactly.
People, there's, let's say, a philosophy
Is
that
inherited
had to do
along with generations.
with
yes.
the Nile.
Yep.
So, for example, if you build the high dam, you destroy the cycle, the age-old cycle of the flood and all
Yeah,
this.
and the sedimentations that we used to
Yes.
receive in order to fertilize our lands, not to have to use lots of nitrogen, which is
Yes, and if you control the water, then you don't have the flood. Now you can break the cycle and do whatever you want to do the whole year. They should have, when you build the dam, okay, you can build your dam, but keep the old cycles going. Open it in the season of the flood.
exactly.
When it comes with a lot of all this rich mud and this rich soil, keep the dam open
Slat
at that
this,
time.
slat, yep,
So that we get the old flood that we used to get. Don't try to change the cycles of nature. So this is one of the first things in environment. Don't go against nature. Try to speak to nature, understand it and all that. So our problem is far greater than the
Carbon emissions.
Than carbon emissions.
But why I spoke with you about carbon emissions, because it's a trendy one.
It's the trendy
It's a
one.
trendy, but at least to get you to understand the trendy, but it's not really the most horrible pollution.
No, it's, you see,
No.
first of all,
But again, it's
quantifiable, yani, in units you feel like
you know, okay.
they're making it business.
No,
That's why.
he spoke about pollution. I'm speaking about
Lie.
pollution up there, mental pollution.
Well,
So
okay.
we have to, yes, so we have to work with the pollution of the environment, but we have to work with the pollution in our heads of not connecting or not speaking or understanding our environment.
Exactly.
So it's very, very sad to see the ancient Egyptians 10,000 years ago understanding all this and building properly and on never building in the green area, so they kept it going. And after 10,000 years,
We are overlooking
sudden-
all of that.
we miss all that.
Yeah. Coop against the nature.
Yes.
هم دلوقتي كمان بيبنوا في وادي دجلة على الحفاير
Okay.
الحفاير بتاع وادي دجلة خلاص
الحفاير بتوع yes.
الكومباوند الجديد بتاع دوا خدوا المحمية.
Now the petrified forest, we are receiving a comment about the petrified forest and how the government is really abusing it
They're
and
abusing
violating,
it.
they are making their violations against it, and they are erasing it and building
know,
on great part of it.
There's another thing, for example, you have, when you get floods, the floods are seasonal. We have, like in Alexandria, there are seasons, let's say,
Yep.
seasons, days.
For
or
storms,
months of
yeah, storms,
Okay,
yep.
There are also greater cycles of floods. In the Maadi area, there is a cycle of great floods, but it's a 120-year cycle. Now you tell me 120 years, let my grandchildren deal with it. So when they built Maadi in the beginning, they built all those canals to take the water of the flood
Yep.
from the mountain all the way going down to the Nile. And you had the main one between Maadi and Degla. You had the main canal there. And because, okay, the flood never came, but the 120 years are not gone yet.
No.
So they decided, let's build over it.
This is the one in Tora.
This one, they
Exactly.
built over it now. So when
Exactly.
the flood comes, Maadi will drown.
So you know everything's taken into consideration. That was the case.
ثلاث سدود على وادي
Ah, but
دجلة.
it won't help you. And when we did the
The
planning-
rain drainage were
Yeah.
there. We were ready for that. And
Yeah.
simply we were addressing what they call the God bringing the village to the city, which is the garden city planning. Very trendy by the turn of the 20th century, and was successful example was here in Maadi. Worldwide, it was a very good standing model for that.
when we did the planning for the Red Sea.
Yeah.
We know that you have the mountains,
Yeah.
but there it's not a 120-year cycle. It would come every 2-3 years. You could have the rains, and you had those. We know from the mountains where the rain comes, where the water comes to the sea. So when we did the planning, we divided the plots in such a way that when we come to those areas where the water comes from mountain to the sea, we said those places are for floods and they should not be given to investors to build projects.
That's why Ras Gharib, mass urbanization, was a big mistake committed by the government in issuing consenting planning and expanding in there, because lots of the disasters happening and lots of casualties existing in Ras Gharib because of that consideration.
They covered the flood canals. Okay.
Simply, please, for decision makers, please study.
No, and we had it in the planning. We had it when we planned, because I did the plan for the Red Sea. I had those areas are not sold, they're not prohibited. So between the hotels, we had the areas for the floods. Now, of course, the investors came and all that, and the government have.
Yep.
I get more investors, more hotels. So they built over all the flood areas. They sold them to the investors.
So the term sustainability is never
And
there.
now-
Monetary value is really prioritized.
Yes, there are some projects now
Yep.
that are drowning every time the flood comes. The project drowns in Sofna. But we told them from the beginning. We told them don't build there. These are areas you should let. It's like your channels. The rain comes in the mountain,
Yeah.
it goes down to the sea.
It's exactly like the street 90 or the 90 meters wide street in Tajammu al-Khamis in the 5th settlement, and it is completely drowned simply because it was a drainage. Because of if those simple students studying topography would discover that they were exceeding the acceleration of urbanization, overlooking the fact of the topographical fact or quality of that area.
بس حاجة صغيرة إن في دراسات مش عايزة أقول مئات لكن آلاف الدراسات في الجيومورفولوجي بتاع الأودية الجافة وحاجة اسمها التحليل المورفومتري للأودية وكمية المية اللي بتنزل عليها. يعني محدش هيعمل دراسة، هو حد هيطبق بس. هو حد محتاج هيطبق.
The professor is stating that there are some morphological studies and the topographic analysis. They are existing. The studies are there, but the only thing that is needed by the decision makers and those who are setting the plans and land use, they just would need only to look at that to make use out of the existing reservoir of studies already there. So
But
please
you know,
visit them.
I want to tell you one thing.
Yep.
When I was planning the Red Sea, you didn't need to have somebody study it for you.
No.
Because you when you were there with the car planning,
Yep,
they were there in front of your eyes.
you could see.
I mean, you had them all in front of your eyes.
You have the trace of the water on the mountain.
Yes,
It's cutting its way, and you can see the damping places
So
of
you
the
say
mountain,
this
and you
piece
can
of
see.
land,
So
okay.
you can read the nature. Read the nature.
I
Read the community.
right or left. Okay, in the middle here, no building, because first of all, you can see it. It's a deep thing. So why sell it to somebody to build over it? So
It's easy.
we saw everything.
Yep.
I'm sorry that I mean this is beyond the topic of the lecture today, because he was dealing with a certain aspect of
Well-
ecology and sustainability. But it is just that I had to tell you all that because I planned the whole Red Sea and took all those things into consideration,
Yep.
and then was sad to see that all the planning for nothing. Because at the end, it's like having a birthday cake and you cut it and give each person who wants a piece to build his hotel.
Uncontrolled, unplanning, actually the sporadic decision
At the
making.
very beginning mentioned something that
Yes.
when you plan for something or design a project, you need to take into consideration the sustainability
Yes.
as well as not to create a problem, so you need to find a solution.
Yes.
for
Exactly.
So
It's a basic
you're
concept of design.
Definitely into the same subject of
Well, it is the same because I mean it's the planning and architecture, yes.
From the start.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and
but
I think also listening to the locals, like you said, is so important because they think that the locals not having the education, but But their education is actually the experience of living there.
Experiential.
You will be experiencing the land. You
They
will
do not have the
observe, you
education,
will
but they have the knowledge.
Yes,
It's
They have the
experiential.
knowledge.
When I was,
Not coming with a degree
yes,
from
you know,
university, but it's
They
practical.
don't have to.
no,
بس
what,
انا عايزه اقول حاجه اللي ينفع الكلام اللي هي بتقوله ده مهم جدا، بس يعني في نموذج لطيف جدا هيرد على الكلام اللي هي بتقوله. مدير المحميه بتاعت
دجلة سيوة.
مدير محميه سيوه مش عامل بيته، عامل بيته حديث.
لا بس
وهو متعلم ومدير المحميه وكل حاجه.
يبقى اللوكال زمان.
He betrayed it.
وبعدين
انا بتكلم على
كل مرة يعني بنحاول نقول له ان لازم يعني انت مدير المحميه، فلازم يبقى بيتك كده، بلاش كده. الاميلان الابيض الفندق بتاع وادي جعفر، كام واحد اشتغل في وادي جعفر من سيوه، اهل سيوه، وعرفوا قد ايه الفندق ده عالمي بيجيب فلوس ودخل
بالظبط،
قد ايه.
بالظبط.
ليه ما كررش النموذج ده وحافظ على بيته القديم؟
بالظبط.
هو مش عايز.
هي
هو زي
fitting
ما
it into
الدكتور-
technology
هو
دلوقتي.
زي ما
We
هو
are-
حاسس بالدنيا.
We are victims of trends.
الحداثة.
Yes.
يعني الحداثة دي هي
هو
اللي
عايز
بتخليه
الإنترنت
لا، بس-
والواي-فاي
Trends.
والكمبيوتر
look, when I
وعايز
went,
التكييف
when I went to Gorna, I mean, I knew some of the things from the planning, the macro level and all that. I knew that, but I didn't know the whole story of cosmology and all that.
Yeah.
But the very strange thing that the person who came to me and said, I want to speak to you, and he told me all those
Everything.
things was the simple driver driving the car. And he told me we had many
This is the most valuable
yes,
information,
we had
the
foreigners
accumulated
with us
knowledge.
and all that. And he told me, I'm speaking to you because we can speak together in Egyptian, but I want to tell you something. Why isn't anybody asking us?
Yeah.
I mean, he told me, I respect that you're a doctor, you're an engineer, you're architects and all that, but what you're building for whom?
Yeah,
For
exactly.
us. Why don't you speak to us? You know, we have a lot of knowledge of nature that he said, I'm sorry, we respect you. We have so much knowledge
To
here
tell you.
that you don't have. So you are building for us.
And you don't
So-
have any problem
Yes,
that the
so
fact is
ask
that you
us.
learn from
Yes,
that
so
simple
ask-
guy. Yeah.
So he
You
said,
don't,
ask.
don't-
And he kept explaining to it some very nice thing. He told me, for example, when somebody is lazy, just a lazy person, what do we tell him? You tell him, I see the sun on your face.
Meaning that he
Meaning
was
that-
lazy enough
Yes,
not
that-
to wake up early enough.
Meaning the sun. He has,
Stand.
yeah, you have
Exactly.
the vault, you know, you have the
Exactly.
vault and you have the hole in the vault. The sun should come and cleanse your bed.
It's embedded in the culture,
Yes.
in the
Now
native
he-
culture. Respect that,
he
study.
Is a
the
lazy
reflector.
person, so instead of the sun coming to cleanse the bed, it came on his face.
And he stand.
So they use the word, I see the
proverb,
the
the
sun
local proverb.
on your face. It means the whole construction of the house, the whole the cosmology and
But we
everything
wouldn't
about.
have understood it except if you understood the
No, of course I wouldn't have understood.
This is, we call it environmental cues.
Yes.
And you cannot understand any environment to read it unless you observe the natives. So you can learn about their environment from their own practice and how they perform their life and daily activities. That's what we need to study. And what is really amazing me that they kept always giving us this in academies, but we don't see this in our projects. Why?
And I'll tell you something.
Yeah.
I think also this has an effect socially as well as on development, because it somehow detaches the community from whatever project taking place. They don't sense ownership.
No.
And if you sense ownership about any kind of project or any assignment,
Yep.
this when you are buying in and you are like a catalyst to move it on. forward.
Exactly.
But they are not.
Exactly. It's a sense of belonging. Ownership is I belong or not. That's what I keep always telling, that please, for anybody who is going to be an outside and an alien to a certain phenomena, a social phenomena, please try to work on something like introduce a kind of symbolic project or whatever interaction with the local in order to gain trust. This would pave the ground for you, and then you would be working accordingly.
You have to get involved.
يعني,
Look,
to a certain extent, at
tell-
least.
Look,
we
I'll
can
tell you
say.
one thing. I went.
If the community is contaminated already with other ideas, then definitely مش دايما.
Well, I want to tell you one thing. I went
Go back and
when I went to Switzerland.
Yes.
I went to Switzerland and met the people living there. So the people living in Switzerland, many areas I was working on, the first thing I noticed that they never carry a mobile phone on their body. The mobile phone is always in the bag. They never have it on the whole day. They never use it. Every couple of hours, they just open it to see if there's a message, something important, put it back and put it in the bag. They don't understand why I have my phone in my pocket. To them, I mean, are you stupid? You carry your phone in your pocket and always on. So then I go in their houses. Yeah, I go in their houses. No, in their houses, there is not one house in the whole village that has a television in the bedroom. Televisions, there's only one television in the house, and it is in the living room, and they have, let's say, the schedule, the TV schedule. When there is a certain cultural problem or something for the children or something special, they go at that time, open the television, watch it, close the television again. Television not on all the time. And I tell them, say, when we want, they have the magazines, when there's something important we want to watch, we open, we watch it and close again. So all of a sudden, you see the people have a certain culture. They have a certain ecological understanding. They know.
They got even with the life force and
Yes.
the cycle of the
they
contexts that
they
they
understand
belong
all
to.
that.
They are not alien with their
But
context no more.
these we're speaking, we think today we are modern people. I sit all day with computer, with my phone and all that. But the Swiss are also modern people.
But the
I mean,
price we
they are-
pay is enormous.
Yes, but
the
they're
price
also
we pay is
advanced
enormous.
countries.
Yes, of
I mean,
course.
all those people they're advanced, but they
Yeah.
still have this notion
Yeah.
of interacting with things that we don't. They still have something in relationship to nature.
Yes. Yes.
So, well, after that, I thank you, Ahmed, very much.
Thank you
It
very
was
much.
A
Thank
very interesting lecture.
Thank you. And we would like to thank
sorry.
you also for your lecture, because this
No,
is
sorry,
another
I took
privilege.
you out of context.
No,
a
no,
bit,
no, baby.
But because all those things, they were directly part of my planning work. And all
Definitely.
that, so I had
Definitely.
to let it all out.
You
know.
had to,
No,
you had to, of
because,
course. And we needed to listen to that.
No, because you know, when you're trying to think ecologically, and nobody else does around you,
Yeah? Yeah.
and everything you do, they just forget it. You're frustrated with time. You're
Yes.
frustrated, and you ask yourself, we've been saying the same thing for the past 50, 60 years,
That's okay.
and you look back, and nobody even cares. Nobody even cares. Yes. So all the when we go to university, all the doctor's degrees that we supervise, and all the students who come, and they're very happy with their doctor's degrees, and they become doctors and all that. They think now, I'm going to go out and find people who listen to me, because he did a subject that he thinks is pioneering.
Yep.
And then you meet that person after 2-3 years, and nobody listens to him. He's forgotten it, and he might have taken a completely different thing in life.
Yeah.
And I asked the universities, for example, why don't you do something so that people who take doctor's degrees here, who do their doctor's research, they are buried. Even their theses are buried
Yeah,
in
buried,
university.
yep.
Why don't the universities try to make every month a a certain event or something, and in those events you're going to speak about the doctor's degrees and get those people out. One of the things that Ahmed is doing with us here is all the people who have done doctor's degrees in relationship to biogeometry. It's been now 25 years of continuous doctor's degrees related to energy and biogeometry and all that. They're in the universities. Nobody hears about them. So we said, why not have everyone who's taken doctor's degree in a subject come and make a lecture about his research, so that we get to know them, because people don't know them. So we want to know them at least.
This is supposed to qualify as a think tank in this terms, to be
So-
just a kind of a counter thesis, like an anti-thesis according to the norms that is really
all
not
of a
respecting
sudden,
the life.
his thesis, instead of
force.
being buried in the university there,
At least we can have something else,
it's
an
on
alternative.
YouTube. We put it on the internet,
Exactly.
because every lecture here, we're putting it on our portal on YouTube. So we want to get those things out so people
Assorted
get
by
encouraged,
subject,
yes.
and it would be, classified, and then later, hopefully, that everything would be just in like a categorized and like a mini diplomas or things like that, and it would be broadcasted definitely.
So we
Hopefully,
thank you
inshallah.
for being here.
Thank you.
And thank you, Ahmed.
Thank you.
And
Thank you for
sorry
giving me such a
taking
valuable
so much
opportunity.
of your
Thank you.
time.
No. I
Okay.
needed to learn, and thank you for
Well,
that.
thank you all.
Thank you.